It's showtime.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny.
Washington is fundamentally corrupt. There are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible.
Made in America, heard around the world. You're listening to Blunt Force Truth. I'm Chuck Woolery, along with my co-host Mark Young, and we got a good show for you today, I think. What do you think, Mark?
I think so. We're having Omar Navarro come back on, and Omar is what I don't know. Would we call him the Don Quixote of California politics?
Perfect. He is the Don Quixote running against Maxine Waters. He needs all the help he can get. He's a nice young man, and we are happy to have him on and try to, help him along with his campaign.
And we're hoping that he's not always tilting at windmills here, that he can actually knock one down.
Now, you had something you wanted to talk to me about. We were talking about this. Was it about progressivism?
Well, what I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this morning, Chuck, and this, I hope this doesn't get too wonky for folks, but this is the kind of stuff.
I'll keep it from getting wonky.
I don't know. You're going to roll off the tracks there too, I think.
No, I won't.
I think, we're starting 2018, and the first thing I think is, like first off, when you look at President Trump, like anybody that starts a new job, and certainly no one is prepared to be president. It's impossible to be prepared to be president. So when you start a new job,
it's impossible to be prepared to be a political president, and Trump is not political. That's the difference.
So he had to learn his way. And I think the President Trump that we've watched in the last part of 2017 is a very different President Trump than the one we saw in January of 2017.
In some ways, yeah.
Well, you notice that he's not chasing the battles on Twitter like he used to.
Well, he's not chasing the individuals.
Right.
Still using Twitter to get his message out.
Right. But he's not getting into, Twitter battles with people that are way below him and unnecessary. Right. Yeah. And I think what it's really been, I think 2017 was his year to find out, how this job works. And, who can I trust? And how do I build a team? And we know that he's gone through people. And people make a big deal about, oh, my goodness, he's had so many people and fired them. Well, that's a sign of a good executive.
Yep.
He brings people in. Well, I made the wrong choice. Get him out. Let's get a new one.
Right.
So I think in 2018, he's going to be, and I believe he was effective in 2017, but I believe he's going to be infinitely more effective in 2018.
And 2019. He will. As he goes along, he'll become more effective every year because he becomes more comfortable with the position. He already knows what he wants to do. He's accomplished so much more than the average American knows about, just simply because the mainstream media won't talk about it. But the regulations that he's cut have been massive and been very important for business. There's so many areas where he is just doing his job, got his head down, doing his job, and where Congress won't cooperate, he does it on his own as best he can. And he's really done a lot.
Now, the other thing that I think people need to recognize is that former President Obama has not retired.
No, he's not going to retire. I mean, Democrats never retire. They just keep on plugging away. It's just it's what they do.
He is actively working against this presidency.
Yeah, right. That's right.
And he has a lot of people embedded into all these federal offices.
He did that on purpose.
Yep, that are still following his agenda.
Yes. Yep.
And it's going to take the president a long time to get these people out.
And we still have kind of two presidents at this point. We do, whether we like it or not.
Yes, we do. And you and I talked about, so what I wanted to talk about is, I believe this is going to be the year that if we think back to the election, during the election, Bernie Sanders made it okay to say you're a socialist.
Mm-hmm.
He brought that.
He's a Democrat socialist or democratic socialist.
He's a democratic socialist.
That's supposed to be different than any kind of other socialist, which is not true. It's the same.
Which is like saying that, I'm a warm, fuzzy Satan worshiper.
Right.
you can call it whatever you want to call it. It's still socialism.
Mm-hmm.
But he brought the word out of the shadows and he started using it.
Well, if you go back in time and look at this historically, let's talk about the word progressive because it's very interesting. It has an old history and a new history. Progressivism came from a German philosopher named Hegel. And Hegel is the father of all of this stuff. Who studied Hegel and who took up his ideas of statism, progressivism, which is really socialism, is, let's see, you got Marx, who followed Hegel. Lenin followed Hegel, and that was communism, socialism, then communism. Then you have, is it Giovanni Gentili, who was the father of fascism in Italy, who you don't know anything about because the left has basically scrubbed his name. And he was a student of Hegel as well.
Now let's stop there for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Stop for a second.
You're interrupting my family tree.
I know, but I want you to expand on something. And that is fascism, communism, socialism, all bred from the same
I'm trying to get to
tree.
This is exactly what I'm saying. So he was a fascist who Mussolini studied under. Hegel, again, was the father of that. Hitler admired Mussolini. He was a fascist who took up the cross of fascism, so to speak, for Germany. And it's socialist fascism. And so if you look at the family tree of all of this, those up until the end of the Second World War is where fascism and communism and socialism and everything, the father of this is Hegel out of Germany in the 1800s. There are other people who were listening at the time. One of those was Theodore Roosevelt. And Roosevelt was our first progressive president. And he did very socialist things, very statist things by collecting all the important land around the country, putting it under the auspices of the state of Washington. And all of this land that he collected and all of this land that he did under the name of national forests, give me some other things.
Landmarks.
Whatever excuse they used, he called it a national. It was a national. So he stole all this land from the states, put it under Washington, under the auspices of Washington, and then that's where almost all of our natural resources are. So you had to go through government to get to them, not through states. So the states could never make these. He overruled all the states in this. So that's Theodore Roosevelt. Now comes along Woodrow Wilson, who is a real strong progressive. And if you don't think so, think of the progressive tax code. That's where
he was the first Obama, really.
He was even worse than Obama, if you can believe it. And by the
similar backgrounds, right?
Well, no, he was not similar backgrounds because he was the president of Princeton, I believe. He was an academic. So anyway, you go through his term for 8 years through the First World War and everything else. By the time progressivism, which had taken a great hold in this country through the teens and 20s, by the time it reached Calvin Coolidge, people didn't want to hear about progressivism anymore. They just hated the word progressive. So it went through the Calvin Coolidge, went through a little bit of Hoover, and then FDR picked it back up but didn't call himself a progressive. He changed it to liberal. So they completely distorted the word liberal, and they were basically liberal progressives. That's what they were. That goes all the way up through, liberal goes all the way up through Hillary Clinton. And in the first run in Hillary Clinton's career as president, or trying to be president, she made a statement on CNN, I believe. They asked her, they said, well, you're a liberal and so on. She said, well, not really. I'm more of a progressive. And Hillary Clinton reintroduced the term progressive back into the political dialogue. And no one knew what she was talking about because it had been lost to history in 1929. It was gone. And liberal had become the word. And now all of a sudden we're going back to progressive, back to Hegel, back to Hitler, back to Mussolini, back to Gentili, back to Lenin, back to Marx. And that's what the Progressive Party of today is. That's the Progressive Democrat. They are socialist at their core. And now if they want to come out and say socialism is okay, it's certainly about time, because they've used the cover word as of progressive to cover everything socialist they want to do up to this point. And I mean, you can take it on to say communist, but it's really not communist as much as it is Marxism. And
some of the local, or not local, more recent thinkers of this ilk would be guys like what, Saul Alinsky?
Yeah, Saul Alinsky was a student of Hegel as well, and also a student of Lenin and Marx. And of course, Hillary Clinton studied at his feet, and he used the word progressive quite a bit. And that's where she picked it up, because she idolized Saul Alinsky. Now, you got to understand that this is not hyperbole. This is just absolute fact. And if you're voting for that Democrat who's running for office, you're voting for someone who is, number one, a socialist, and number two, trying to cover it with the word progressive. And I don't think you really want that, because Venezuela is socialist. It always leads to a dictatorship. It always leads to kind of an oligarchy. We as Americans, that is totally antithetical. To be an American is to be a socialist. And yet, because of all of the presidents in our past, with the Woodrow Wilson's progressive tax code and other things, with the 17th Amendment's another one, with Woodrow Wilson, with FDR, with all the things he did, Social Security and all of these other things, all of these little masked federal programs that came along that were socialist. I mean, Social Security was supposed to take care of widows and orphans. And look who it takes care of today, and it's broke. So it's just the same kind of thing that we kind of fall for all the time. But if you're not aware of it, you probably would never be able to pick these guys out of the herd. But you really need to with that information.
Well, I think this year is going to be the year that you're going to see the left do a full court press on the word socialism.
And I think the reason for that is for our colleges and universities have literally indoctrinated our children to become socialists.
Right. And a very high percentage of people under the age of 35 think socialism's a good form of government, a good economic system.
Well, listen, there were elites in our government, elites in our colleges and universities in the 1800s and 1900s that thought the same thing. It didn't work. It was a disaster. It's always been a disaster every place it's been, but it seems like they always have to go back to that. And the reason they do is understand that socialism is complete control of everything by the state. It incorporates the private sector into the public sector, and everything comes under their control. And everything will work as a bureaucracy feels like it should work. There is no freedom in it. There's no individuality in it, and there's no chance to grow in it. You will become stagnant, and then you'll go on the negative side, just like we have been the last 8 years with Obama. It was 1.5%, 2%, and that was supposed to be the new normal. Well, that's socialism. It will take you to 1.5%, 2%, and then it'll start to fall off, and that'll be the new normal.
But we see that new normal's changed in 2017 under a president who likes capitalism.
Exactly. We've gotten away from it and back to free market capitalism. To a degree, we can still go further, but as you see, the Democrats absolutely hate that idea. But America will grow. The individual will have more power. Small businesses will do better. It's an interesting dynamic that the Democrats have made between government and the private sector. If it were not, look at it this way. Private sector is the tree. That's us. The mistletoe, which is a parasite, is the government that hangs off the tree. And yet the socialist would make the parasite bigger than the tree.
Well, when you look at America today, we're not a capitalistic country. We're a mixed economy.
That's because of all these progressive presidents we've had up to this point, and progressive Congresses too.
Right. So we are part socialist now.
We are.
And the things that the so-called democratic socialists claim they want are already in place. Obamacare is socialism.
Well, I mean, if they can take over the oil industry, you name any industry that's in the private sector, they want to own it. They want to run it. They want to call the shots.
Right,
so they do through regulations by now, which Trump is cutting by the boatload. And if they were running it, they just overregulate everything.
But it's why I'm saying the term democratic socialist is a Trojan horse, because we already have a form of what you would call a democratic socialism now.
We are in a post-constitutional country right now.
So the only way to become more socialist now is to do what you're saying, which is a complete government takeover. And speaking of having Omar Navarro on today, wasn't it Maxine Waters who threatened the oil companies to take them over?
Well, that falls right in line with a socialist. It falls right in line with a progressive. That's what they do.
And she caught herself.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's amazing how they've been able to deflect that purpose and underlying ideology that they follow and try to call it something else, Americanism. It is the most antithetical thing to Americanism in the world. It's one of the great questions you can ask any of these people if they will be honest with you, and they may not. But all you got to do is ask a progressive. That's usually a Democrat. There are some Republican progressives, but ask them this question. If you had anything to change, if you could change anything in the Constitution, what would you change? That's a great question for a progressive, because you'd either get an earful or you'd get nothing, because either they know what they'd like to change, which is everything in it,
pretty much,
or they'd nothing and they would just deflect.
Which means they don't know what they're talking about. They're just talking from somebody told me.
Exactly.
Let's take a little break here. I want to talk about Dermend. Dermend is like one of the great products, skin products for people my age, over 50 maybe. They have a great itch product. They have an unbelievable bruise product. These lotions are, basically one of them's coconut oil. They're fabulous lotions to begin with, but they also do things that are just amazing for your skin. Just they help it look younger, more youthful, get rid of all those blotches and prevent, all this heavy bruising that I get on my arms because of the medication that I have to take, and so many of us do have to take. So it's a great preventative, and it's a great maintenance lotion to use.
You're right, Chuck. Dermend is a great line. There's 3 products, and I'm going to tell you, Dermend has a lot of very expensive products in these formulas. There's 3 products. There's the anti-bruise product, or the bruise relief product, which you use, and your arms look freaking amazing now. Like I said, they used to look like you were an MMA fighter. And
it's true.
and now they don't. There's the anti-itch product, which you can use, of course, if you have an itch product. But the anti-itch product is amazing because as we get older, we start to develop these chronic itches. And you can use this product every day. And you can't use other itch formulas every day because they have hydrocortisone in it, which thins the skin. Yeah. And Dermend has products that help thicken the skin. And then the last item, and I really think this is really one for the ladies, to be honest with you, and that's that fragile skin. And that's the one, no matter what you do, you can get a facelift, you can get Botox, you can do whatever you want to do on your face. You can't make your hands look younger. And this product does.
Yeah.
And it's an awesome product. So folks, try it out. Walgreens, Walmart, CVS, Rite Aid. Look for it. In most stores, you will find it in the first aid section. So it's Dermend. So it's interesting. You keep hearing people call President Trump a fascist.
Well, of course.
And he's Hitler.
I'm surprised they don't call him a communist, but that's a little too close to their heart. They love Marxism, so they don't want to call him something they love, but they'll call him a fascist because of Hitler.
Well, I think there's 2 reasons. One, they call him a fascist.
They never attach fascism to Mussolini. They always attach it to Hitler.
And I think they do that because Hitler's the boogeyman. He's the scary person that no one wants.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So I think that's the thing. Now, here's the way they get there. The way they get there, there is one distinct difference between fascism and socialism. And you know what that distinct difference is?
Populism?
Not almost. This is how they tie Trump to it. Socialism as its core is globalist.
Right.
Fascism at its core is nationalist.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
But every other aspect is identical.
Right. Fascism actually incorporates both. It incorporates global and local because it can't not do it because the Nationalist Socialist Party of Germany, they're socialists.
But where they drag Trump into this is the fact that Hitler's rise to power and fascism was based on making Germany great again.
Mm-hmm.
It was focused on building the master race in Germany, which is how they try to tie Trump to it. Now, what I think is hysterical is, who is it that's standing up to the UN defending Israel right now?
Well, of course, it's Trump. I mean, this is all hyperbole. None of this is really true. It's just trying to devise a way to mislead people, and because of their hate for Trump. They think he's a boor. They think he's a Neanderthal. They think he's coarse. They don't like him. So they attack him any way they can with, and it's false. But
I mean, it's hysterical. I mean, think about Hitler when Hitler first came to power. Okay, first off, he massively regulated everything prior to taking everything over. That's Obama.
Well, right. That's right. I mean, Trump's doing just the opposite.
National health care.
Mm-hmm.
Trump's trying to get rid of it.
Right.
Increase taxes. Trump cut them. Go after the Jewish nation. Trump's the best thing that ever happened to Israel in the world.
Oh, and they know
modern history. Do you know that they're talking about naming their new, train station or airport, the Donald J. Trump?
Yeah, it's a train station in Jerusalem.
And they're going to name it after him.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, everything that President Trump is doing is 180 degrees in the opposite direction of anything Hitler would do, other than he's for America first, for his own country first. That's their complete connection.
I want our listeners to be really well versed on progressivism, where it came from, what it's led to, and what we are up against as a country as this spreads. And it's not disguised anymore. And if you're right, Mark, they come out as socialists, then there's absolutely no disguise left ever anymore. Because, I mean, you remember Joe the plumber, when he came up and accused Obama of being a socialist, they trashed him instantly. That is not going to happen anymore.
Well, the only way that we can institute more socialism at this point, I've really been looking at this, Chuck, and it almost gets to the point that it's going to be hard to institute much more unless we literally start changing the Constitution.
Well, if the Democrats have their way, and the progressive Democrats have their way, and some progressive Republicans as well, they will start trying to do that. And of course, it's very funny. Principles really don't change. They shouldn't change. And that's why I think a good conservative is locked into the principles of the Constitution. If things change dramatically where you have to change those principles or add to those principles, then we can do that through constitutional convention. So there are ways to do it, and the founders provided that. But, when you got people who literally hate the founding in this country and, think that everybody was a slave owner and everybody was white and that's what they did, and now it's not, the demographics aren't like that anymore, and we need to change the Constitution to accommodate different people, when in fact it has nothing to do with skin color. It has to do with ideology and what you believe in. So, you know what? I think we've really run about as far as we can down this track. Well, let's introduce our guest.
Well, we're going to be talking with Omar Navarro, and Omar is running for Congress in California in Maxine Waters' district. He is, I believe, 29 years old. He is a Republican. We've had him on the show before. He certainly displays solid conservative values. And Chuck, I think this could be an interesting race because Maxine Waters' district has been gerrymandered, and it's no longer primarily an African-American market. It's actually 53% Hispanic, which does play to Omar Navarro.
You can only hope so. And he's got his work cut out for him, but I think he's up to the job.
Well, let's hear what he's got to say. Chuck, welcome to Blunt Force Truth. Our guest today, who's coming back for the second time, Omar Navarro, and he is the guy who has decided to take on Mad Maxine Waters in California.
I know. How you doing, Omar? How are you, buddy?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. Listen, how's the race going out there? Is it pleasantly quiet?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not pleasantly quiet. There's a lot of things going on right now with the race. I mean, we have a lot of good things that we're doing. We have just had an event, a holiday party just recently. We had a lot of people that came, a lot of young people, which is good.
Yeah.
We also had Maxine Waters asking for the investigation of the campaign.
She wants to
we forged the
investigate your
document.
campaign?
Yes.
Oh, well, good. Well, great. Open your books.
Yeah, be happy to. Maxine Waters is trying to investigate everybody, but, no one's investigating her.
Well, see, that's the thing with investigators. As long as you're investigating somebody else, nobody has time to have you investigated. So that's just a tactic. That's all.
Has she threatened to have you impeached yet?
I mean, not yet, but it could happen, right?
No.
So what is she investigating you for?
Basically, there's a document that someone sent to our campaign over 6 months ago, and they wanted to find out if the document was true or not. I asked the people in my campaign. They told me they didn't think that the document was true, but there's still questions about it. And people talked about how Maxine wanted to bring 50-something thousand refugees into the district over the next 5 years working with CAIR. And there were some names in that document that seemed quite familiar, where Maxine has worked with these people in the past with CAIR. So I started asking myself, well, if this document is true? Well, Maxine Waters had no response. We emailed her to find out if this was a real document, first of all. We had people call her office, no response. So we have a representative who's unresponsive and does not want to respond to just a simple letter. So we have no choice but to release it. So we released it, put it on Twitter to find out if this document was real. So what happens is Maxine Waters finally responds and says that we forged the document, that the U.S. attorney should be investigating me.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, Omar, just for our audience, Chuck and I know who you're talking about, but when you say CAIR, describe to our audience who CAIR is.
Well, CAIR, in the easiest terms to explain CAIR is basically a way to radicalize our country with Islam. And that's what CAIR is all about.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right.
So
and they have a lot of faithful followers in the Democrat Party. And the Democrat, not the party as a whole, but in the elitist leadership of the Democrat Party.
All right, so Omar, tell us a little bit about this document, because I don't think Chuck and I have seen it. So expand on this a little bit. What is it that this document claims to do? Maxine refused to acknowledge it. Is she now saying that it is a forgery? Is that what she's saying?
Yes.
Well, she refused to
basically
acknowledge it until it was made known to the public, and then she acknowledged it by saying it was untrue, correct?
Yeah, of course. But Maxine Waters, this is very surprising, though, because Maxine Waters, you could throw anything at her, and any opponent in the past 27 years has thrown a lot at her. And she not once has called them their opponent. She has not once called them by name. For me to even get her attention a year before an election is amazing.
So that's a good thing.
Because never happened before.
Okay, now your district has been restructured. It used to be primarily African American. It's not primarily African American today, right?
No, it's not. Actually, the registration of voters in the district is actually 54% of the demographic is Latino voters in the district. You have a 17% registration of Black voters, and then you have it's about 20-something% registration of white voters in the district, and you have 8% registration of Asian voters in the district. So it's very it's scattered. It's different now. Since 2012, everything changed.
So why does Maxine Waters want to flood the district with, are we talking about, Syrian refugees? What are we talking about she wants to bring in?
Yeah, for me, it's concerning because in my head, I'm thinking if Maxine Waters floods the district with refugees in general, or anything working with CAIR, you're putting people in that are connected to Islam. And therefore, they're going to favor people like Maxine Waters to keep their seats. And also, Maxine Waters has had a history of involvement with CAIR. I'm not sure if you've seen, but she's been involved in a lot of ways with fundraising for them and helping them out as an organization. Maxine Waters has really strong ties to CAIR. And this is a very serious thing that we really have to acknowledge, that we can't have representatives. Even people like John Conyers had involvement in CAIR. That's why Maxine Waters has said nothing against John Conyers. It's specifically, she's speaking good things about him. So when she had an interview not too long ago with an interviewer, she was saying good things about him, not bad things.
Well, Conyers is up in my area here in Detroit. Was not in his district, but I was right next to him. And here in Detroit, he and his wife are just legendary. I mean, his wife, robbed the city blind. And the part that always cracked me up with Conyers was in testimony, he testified that when his wife came home with a new Cadillac wearing a new fur coat, he didn't notice.
What?
Yeah, right. Well, this is the kind of thing that goes on. If the electorate or if the people who are going to vote for you, if they'll accept this kind of corruption and this kind of deception, there's very little that you can do about it unless they're knowledgeable. And if they are knowledgeable and they still accept it, it just is amazing to me. I don't know why they would do that. And another thing that's kind of interesting to me, and I'm not sure why, but the African-American community as a whole seems to embrace Islam more than anyone else. And I do you ever notice that? And I don't really know why. Well,
historically, that has a lot to do with people like Malcolm X. That has a lot to do with people like Ali, Muhammad Ali. That has a lot to do with people in history that have, like Tupac, that rapper, that have pushed Islam. But the Islam that they push is not the same Islam that the rest practice.
Right, they're more the Calypso Louis Farrakhan brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what they don't understand is they think that it's all the same. It's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
No, if you look at the Farrakhan brand of Islam, that's basically just hate white people religion.
Exactly.
So what is your biggest obstacle besides time in office and name recognition with Maxine Waters and running against her? What's the toughest thing for you?
Well, the biggest thing for me is basically, funding. I mean, obviously Maxine Waters is going to pull up a lot of money from special interest groups. And the majority of my contributions, I raised $200,000, but the majority of my contributions are under $200. And I'm really thankful for it, because the majority of those donors and the small donors really matter to my campaign, because they've really put me through a lot of things that we were able to have. Like, we have a campaign office in the district, and thanks to them, they made it possible. So I want to thank everybody who donated to me, because I really appreciate it.
How much does Maxine have in her account right now?
Cash on hand, Maxine has about close to $160,000.
That's it. I'm surprised.
Well,
that's
yeah,
it.
but that doesn't count, Mark, because if she is, they know she will never be in trouble. This is how they feel about it. The DNC looks at Maxine Waters and goes, no problem. She will be reelected. We don't need to spend a dime. But if Omar Navarro starts to cut into that and becomes a threat to her, then they will pour millions into her. I guarantee you, just to keep that seat.
And I'll put this out there too, so you guys know. I read an article online where there was a PAC that said that they were going to spend $1.6 million in my race.
Oh, really?
Well, they might as well just mail everybody a check for $25, every voter.
I mean, yeah, well, that's what Maxine did the last election. I mean, she spent $1 million against me, and that's how she won. I spent $3,000. I spent nothing. But, at the end of the day, who's smarter?
I still
that's what it comes down to.
I still think that message, if you can get your message out and it's clear to people, and you can show them that an alternative that benefits them, I still think that message trumps money. I really do.
I do agree with you, because there was a district next to me, and there was an election that happened. There was a state senator who's running for Congress to take over Janice Hahn's seat. I don't know if you know who Congresswoman Janice Hahn was.
No.
But Janice Hahn was a big name here in Los Angeles. Her father was the mayor of Los Angeles. She was an LA City Councilwoman who ran for Congress, successfully won, and then ran for supervisor of Los Angeles, and now is the supervisor of Los Angeles. So, Maxine Waters, Manette Barragan challenged an establishment guy who was already a state senator. She was a city councilwoman from outside the district. She was not even living in the district, and challenged this guy that was already in the position, got endorsed by Obama, got endorsed by Janice Hahn, got endorsed by Maxine Waters, got endorsed by every major Democrat you can think of. And this lady challenged him. She was a Democrat too, but she was no longer, she was running against him because she knew that there was a growing population in the district of Latinos. And in that district, the Latino voters are close to 70%. And she ran against him going into June. Isidore Hall finished at first place, and she finished second. But then going into November, guess what happened? She won with 70% of the vote. Wow. And he spent over $3 million. She spent less than $1 million in her race.
Mm-hmm. So the message did count.
Yeah, the message got out there. And I think a lot of people, especially in my district, and this is the thing, that you still have a lot of Latino voters who vote Latino. They don't vote Republican or Democrat. They vote Latino. And I don't think it's right. I think that people should vote out of being educated and understanding how politics work and everything. But a lot of times, Democrats have enslaved them to this mentality of separation. And that's the way we're going to beat them.
I don't even think – I think it's even more than that. And that is I don't think that most white people today vote for other white people. I could be wrong about that. But
I don't think that's so. But traditionally, minorities have done this historically.
And the key word to that, and the key word to that is minorities. When you're a minority, you have a tendency to stick together with your own, and you feel like that's the safe place to be, and that's why I think they do it. It has very little to do with ideology, with politics, with what's good or bad for you. It just has to do with identity. And
exactly.
Yeah, whether that's good or bad, trying to change that dynamic is tough, but you can do it. Let me ask you a question. Now, I'm kind of curious. I'm watching what Jerry Brown's doing with the sanctuary state of California now. I'm watching the go-around by the state Senate. They're talking about the go-around of making your taxes contributions to the government so that you can actually write them off, your city taxes, property taxes. Because, quite frankly, you and I both know, you living in California, me used to live there, the taxing in California is just ridiculous. I mean, it's so high. It's so out of hand. It's so, it's like every other New Jersey, New York, California, Illinois, all these blue states just take such advantage of their tax base. And now they're trying to do a go-around because they hate Trump's tax plan, and they figured they got to give rich people a break, which I think is hysterical now because they're always trying to hurt rich people and tell them they don't need all that money and everything else. Now they're trying to figure out how they can save it for them. It's just so hypocritical. But what is your sense of how people are feeling about these things? And throw immigration in there with it, because now they've opened it up to MS-13 and anybody else that wants to come in.
I mean, did you see the most recent there's in the board of California and Nevada, there was a big banner that was put out in the freeway, and it said, "Welcome MS-13, welcome. We're basically a sanctuary state." It was really we're welcome to MS-13 and we are a sanctuary state.
Yeah,
it was a very interesting sign.
How is the average person reacting to this? Do you have a feel for that?
I mean, the average person in California that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, people that are active in politics, I mean, they're ticked off, and there's a lot of them, but there's a lot of normal people who are not even looking at this. These are people that are concerned about driving their kids to school, their parents that are busy taking their kids to after-school programs. They're busy with their day-to-day lives. They're busy working, that they're not really paying attention to what's going on in the political process. A lot of us look at it as like, wow, why wouldn't you pay attention? But these are normal people, and these are how they react. They only pay attention to politics maybe 2% of the time in a week. And I mean, that's how much we really got them for. And I think at the end of the day, it has to come down to us really going out and reaching out to them. If we want to have success in California as Republicans, we have to reach out to people. And I think we're no longer into the circumstance where we can just send a message over a radio station or over TV. We really have to go door to door. We have to rebrand ourselves. We have to change the message around so we can get people back in, because people are not going to wake up unless we go to them. That's what's happening right now. That's what's been happening in my race. I mean, every time I go to people and I talk to them, I'm able to change a lot of people's minds. I'm able to make them see differently, even if they don't agree with me. But they'll see things differently from talking to me, so which is good. If we can get people's mentality to change, we can really change things around.
Chuck Woolery here. Did you know that many common prescription medications cause dry mouth? You know, that thirsty, dehydrated, sticky feeling? Most dry mouth rinses leave you with a bad aftertaste and bad breath. But my favorite mouthwash, Smart Mouth, has a new all-day clean breath formula for those of us with dry mouth. That means 24-hour clean, fresh breath with twice daily use and relief from nasty, stale dry mouth. Look for Smart Mouth Dry Mouth Formula with exclusive moisture lock technology in the purple and white dual pour bottle at Walmart. Well, you got an uphill battle out there, I know that, but you don't seem to be dissuaded at all. So I'm happy to back you and wish you the best of luck and everything else. And I know Maxine's going to come after you. The more threat you become, the more vicious they become. And when I say they, I mean Democrats. They are just vicious. They don't want to give up any kind of power. And if they sense they're going to lose it to you, they will come after you. And so I'm sure you're braced and ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've already had a lot of people coming after me for many different things in the past year, and I've had my own party do that. So if I could survive my own party within this year, I'm sure I could survive the Democrats this coming year. So
Omar,
it's a lot of work, but it can be done.
Have you had any challenges for your personal safety, for you, your family, your workers?
I mean, yes, I have. I've had events where I've had threats on my events, like where they're going to take them down. I've had businesses intimidated and told if they held my event that they're going to shut them down, that they're going to vandalize their property. And it's really it's a really scary thing to think about, especially when you have supporters, and a lot of supporters are very confident and they're going to come no matter what. But a lot of people do get intimidated and they don't come to the event. And because you have one side and one party who's intimidating people, who they don't respect free speech, they don't respect what our country is about. They just want they want people to hear whatever their message is, and that's what communism is about. And we are having people here in California who try to censor people's free speech, and it's happening in my campaign. I mean, I've had my campaign office. They put posters on it calling me they said that I abused women and this and that, trying to demean my campaign. What I did, I just picked it up, took it off, and threw it in the trash and moved on. But I mean, these are things that they do, and also part of it, also vandalizing my car, kicking it, breaking my window. I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened since I started running.
That's too bad. I mean, it's such a volatile atmosphere out there to run against Democrats. I mean, they are violent. They are. The left has always been violent, and that's just part of the deal. When you run against them, they will be violent. And I don't know. Law enforcement needs to, protect you. That's all.
Yeah, and law enforcement. I would say this for the most part. A lot of them in a lot of communities, different cities, they've done a pretty good job when I go out there to different events. But there's some that out there that are bought and paid for by these politicians, and they're going to take orders from them. And not necessarily that they don't want to do their job. It's just that they're scared of losing their job. So they have to side with these people. And it's a scary thought that there's no defense. I think sometimes maybe the police department should be a separate entity from being controlled by a city council. So I think that should be something that should be looked at and revised, because we can't have people making political decisions, not protecting people and their constitutional rights.
Well, I tell you, we wish you all the best of luck. We really do. And we're going to make sure that that all the information you have is connected on our site on Blunt Force Truth, that anybody wants to get in touch with you, anyone wants to support you. And Mark, you want to add to that?
Yeah, Omar, what kind of, are you getting any endorsements coming at you yet?
Yeah, I had a recent endorsement Barry Goldwater Jr. I'm not sure if you know who Barry Goldwater was, but
I actually know who Barry Goldwater Jr. is. I know him.
Yeah. Also, Mike Antonovich also endorsed the campaign, which is that's a huge endorsement on its own. He's a big entity on his own, which I'm happy about. Because Mike Antonovich, I've known him since I was like 22 years old. I'm almost 29 in January 9th. My birthday's coming up. And, I'm just excited to have the support of so many people that I've been around with for many years.
And you still have, is Joy Vila still been out campaigning for you?
Joy's been dealing with some of her stuff that on her, her personal stuff that she's been dealing with. And, as I've been dealing with my own campaign. So the contact we have is very minimal. I don't know what's going on with her right now. But I know there's stuff going on, but at the same time, I have a lot of things going on, and I get a lot of people who try to ask me and try to tie me down to whatever drama is going on other people's campaigns and other people's lives, and at the end of the day, I'm focused on what I'm doing and what I'm trying to pursue, and that's to beat Maxine Waters. That's my focus.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Joy actually lined up coming on the show here. Shortly, we're going to talk to her about some of that stuff. What can we do to help you? So the first thing I want to say to our audience is, this is Omar's running against Maxine Waters. And if you don't live in that district of California, you might think, well, this doesn't have any effect on me. The issue is, as a country, we need to get rid of people like Maxine Waters, like Nancy Pelosi, like
Susan
Warren, Susan Collins. So
John McCain.
Yeah. Flake. So there's people
here we go.
Jeff Flake, he's gone.
Oh, he's not
definitely gone.
Yes, he is.
He ran away.
Right. He ran away, but he
can't win, so he's quitting, and so's Corker. They're gone.
But he's going to figure out some other way to weasel back. But
I'm sure he will.
We need, as a country, we need to get rid of these people. We have a swamp going on in Washington. And Chuck and I were just talking when we were waiting for you to come on, that the amount of corruption that exists in Washington right now is at a breathtaking level. And if the majority of Americans really understood the level of corruption in Washington right now, I think they would be sickened, if not vomiting. I mean, what do you think, Chuck?
Oh, it's just, it's beyond belief. And ever since Trump ran, in fact, I've always, obviously we all believed it because we know it's true, but I never really understood the volume and amount, the just, no one cares. They just do it because they get away with it. There's no responsibility. There's no accountability. It's just amazing how they have all of these investigations and they go absolutely nowhere at the end of the day. Everybody forgets about it. Everybody that comes up to testify says, well, it's an ongoing investigation. I can't tell you anything. So nothing gets accomplished. It's sad. It's sad for our country.
So what I'm saying to our audience is, I don't care if you don't live in the district, if you don't even live in California, we need to get behind these local congressional races as a country and drive this. And I don't know what other word to use it, Chuck,
well,
other
encouragement,
than poison or corruption out of our government.
Yeah, we need to encourage these new people to come along to take, as much corruption out of the government as they possibly can. Of course, the first day that you show up for indoctrination, no matter what party you're in, you're going to find out what your Congress is all about, and it's not going to be pleasant. You're going to spend 75% of your time raising money for the party instead of taking care of your people, or you won't get any kind of assignment.
Yeah, that is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole nother problem. But at least if we can get some honest, straight young guys like Omar in there, maybe that's another chance for us to go after that mechanism. Because we need young Congress people who are not beholden to anybody to go in there and refuse to play the game.
Yeah, that's what you need.
And Maxine Waters is a major part of the game. What I find interesting about Maxine Waters is I'm assuming you never see her in the district. She's all over the rest of the country trying to impeach the president and doesn't even seem to understand what impeachment means.
Well, it's very funny because a lot of these congressmen, and Omar, I'm sure you'll understand what I'm saying. A lot of these Congress people are really nationalists. They're not really about their community or about the district that they represent. They're about the party. They're about what's going on in the nation. It has nothing to do with their constituency. They're there to represent their constituency, and very few of them do.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, that happens a lot within the process. I mean, you have a lot of these people who are not even concerned about their own people. They're concerned about everybody else's life besides their own constituents.
So they're representing their party, not their district.
Right. Yeah, and trying to get reelected.
Yeah. So Omar said something interesting. That is that the Republican Party has not come out to help you, right?
No, they haven't come out to help, but I don't expect them to. But at the same time, I do think that the party should unite. I think the party needs to step up, and I think they need to do something. Because remember, Maxine Waters is enemy number one. She is one of the people that is in the top who is being the most outspoken, who is speaking against the president. She is a threat, and Maxine Waters needs to go.
Well, keep in mind that if the party doesn't get behind you, you don't owe the party anything when you get to Washington.
I 100% agree with you.
So we the people need to get behind you, and we need if you support President Trump in any fashion, then Maxine Waters needs to be public enemy number one. So I'm going to encourage people. What is the URL to your website, Omar?
It's omarnavarro.com. OmarNavarro.com.
We'll have a link at bluntforcetruth.com to that in the show notes. Folks, I want to encourage you to go give some money. It doesn't matter if it's $5, if it's $10. It adds up, and it does something else. It shows support. It lets the other side know, look, America's getting behind these new candidates. Mm-hmm. So I really encourage you to do that. Omar, stay in touch with us. Let us know where things are going. Let Chuck and I know what we can do to help.
Thanks, Omar. It's
definitely.
Chuck. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you so much.
God bless you both. All right. See you now. Well, Omar's an interesting guy. He's got an uphill battle, and we're doing everything we can to help him, and I hope our listeners out there will play along.
I think he can win. I mean, you look at Trump won with half the money, but I mean, he's going to need to raise a lot more money than he has right now.
He's very energetic, though. He's got a good message. He's a good guy. So hopefully he can get the job done.
One of the things that he's going to do, Chuck, is he's going to outwork her.
Oh, that's for sure. She doesn't feel like she needs to work at all.
This kid,
Hillary Clinton sent him where she'd just sit back, and it's always been there. It'll always be there. And that's why the Democrats aren't putting any money in it yet.
This kid is going door to door to every house in that district.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he'll work.
And people like to vote for people they've met. I mean, how many people in that district do you think you've ever got a chance to meet Maxine Waters? She's an elitist. She's too important to meet them.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate everybody listening today. We hope you'll pitch in and do something if you can. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd appreciate it. You can catch us on iTunes or Stitcher. Leave us a good review because we can use all we can get. We appreciate those too, and we appreciate you, our listeners. And Mark, until next time on Blunt Force Truths, bye-bye, everybody.